The Cave of the Ritual. I didn't plan to leave the city that weekend. I couldn't even remember when was the last time I slept away from the noise of cars or the electric hum of buildings. But she insisted. He said we needed to disconnect, though he said it without using that well-worn word. He just said, "I need to hear something other than walls." We had distanced ourselves without big fights, in those silent ways that don't hurt but wear out. We spent the days talking just enough, and the nights each one looking at their screen. When he mentioned the forest, it sounded more like a plea than a plan. And although I was not entirely convinced, I accepted. Perhaps because his voice sounded as it did before, with that thread of hope that had not heard him for a long time. The place was chosen by her. A place where she had gone with her family as a child, about 3 hours from the city. "There's a creek nearby and flat land for camping," he said. Nothing else. I didn't look it up on maps, nor did I ask if it was still open to the public. I only loaded the car with the basics: the tent, gas, flashlights, coffee, and 2 thermoses of water. The very routine of the assembly gave me a peace that I had not felt for months. We left at dawn on Friday. The highway was empty, and the sky had that pale blue hue that promises warmth ahead. She rested her head on the window and remained silent almost all the way. I tried to put music, but even the songs seemed out of place. So we let the engine be our conversation. When the asphalt turned to dirt, the phone signal was lost without drama. On the sides, the trees began to grow closer together, taller, as if they wanted to swallow the road. The air changed its smell: resin, humidity, dry leaves. She sat up and looked at me with an expression I hadn't seen in a long time. And without saying it, I knew we had arrived. The clearing we chose was by a stream, close enough to hear it, far enough away not to wet the tent. The ground was flat, covered with pine needles, and the light filtered through branches painted stains on the earth. She stopped in the middle of the clearing and said, "It's all right here." I had no reason to argue. We set up the tent in silence. She held the stands while I fitted them. That wordless coordination reminded me why we had once worked. The nylon tightened with a clean crunch. The air smelled of resin and old wood. There was no wind, but the tops moved as if breathing. We turned on the gas stove to make coffee. She drew a small map in her notebook: a tree, the stream, and a triangle around the store. He showed it to me, smiling. I told him it was perfect. The afternoon went down quietly. No animal was curious. The forest had that peace that does not reassure, but leaves you without arguments. We had little dinner and put out the heat early. The silence was so great that you could hear the flickering of the embers. We went into the store with just enough fatigue so as not to think too much. I slept fast. Or I thought he was sleeping. I was awakened by something that I could not name. A sensation before a sound. Outside, the air had become thick, as if the forest was holding its breath. Then I heard the footsteps. They were not animal steps. They were measured, human. They circled the clearing, slow, exact, as if following a compass that only they knew. She moved beside me and took my wrist. He said nothing. The footsteps were repeated 3 times around, and then, between them, voices emerged. Casualties, serious, without language. It wasn't conversation. It was a throat song, a rhythm without melody. The fabric of the tent vibrated. The air became warmer. We didn't move. There are sounds that do not admit witnesses. The chanting continued for a few minutes and then died down as if someone had closed a door. The forest resumed its normal murmur, and even so the silence that remained was different, heavier. We didn't sleep the rest of the night. We wait for the light. When dawn broke, the ground looked exactly the same, but the air didn't. She went to the creek to wash her face and called me. On a flat rock, 3 small stones were lined up from largest to smallest, forming a semicircle. No one had put them like that the previous afternoon. We didn't say anything. We returned to the camp. While I was making coffee, I saw something on the rope where we hung our clothes. An extra turn in the knot. Small, insignificant, but not ours. She noticed it too. None of them touched it. After breakfast, he proposed to walk a bit, just to see more of the forest. I accepted because I didn't know how to tell him that I preferred not to move anything. The path climbed following the course of the water. As we went along, I noticed details I didn't remember. Diagonal cuts in the trunks, small mounds of stones, leaves arranged in lines too straight to be natural. These were not new signs. They had always been there, but now we saw them. The forest was not closed. It was organized. It was she who first saw the entrance. Between ferns, an oval opening, polished by the rubbing of many shoulders. On the right, a strand of red cloth caught in a branch. He looked at me without speaking. I had seen it too. Just a glance, he said. I turned on the flashlight and took a step inside. The air changed. It smelled of wax and humidity. On the left wall, a relief, a circular symbol engraved and then covered in soot. On the floor, remains of wicks and a spiral stroke, made with something metallic. We are not going any further. The darkness ahead seemed to absorb the light. So far, I said. She nodded. We backed away without turning our backs. Outside, the forest breathed the same as before, but we didn't. The rest of the day was weird. Nothing happened, and yet everything seemed out of place. The wind changed direction without moving the treetops. The creek paused she didn't remember, and the forest became noisier just as the sun began to set. She spent the afternoon writing in her notebook. I didn't open it, but I could see that he wasn't drawing this time. He was just writing single words. I stood by the fire, turning the lid of the thermos with an anxiety that I couldn't explain. Sometimes I felt that someone was watching us, although there were no signs, no shadows, no new noises. Just that feeling, old as instinct, that says, we are not alone. When night returned, darkness fell faster than the day before. The forest seemed to have swallowed the light without waiting for the sunset. She wanted to sleep early. I pretended to do it. I stayed escuchando nada the stream. Nor insects. Just a silence of held breath. I fell asleep unintentionally. I woke up hours later with a dry mouth and a heart too fast. The air inside the tent was warm, as if someone had lit something outside. I sat up and opened the zipper just a few centimeters. The flashlight in red showed just enough. The fire out, the backpacks, the empty rope. And, a few steps from the stream, something that seemed like a reflection. As if there were a candle lit in the middle of nowhere. I called to her in a whisper. He did not answer. She was sleeping. I turned off the flashlight and went out slowly. The ground was cold, the leaves damp. The light was still there, fixed. I got 3 meters closer and understood that it was not a candle. It was a set of small flames in a circle, as if someone had drawn a dot with fire. There was no one there. The sound came later, light footsteps through the trees, very close, behind. I turned, but the forest is adept at hiding. I saw nothing, although the air vibrated. Instinct did its thing. I ran to the store, closed the zipper, and woke her up with a pull on my shoulder. I told him what I had seen. He didn't quite believe me, or he didn't want to. He hugged me tightly, and we stayed like that until dawn. When the sun rose, there was no trace of fire, no footprints, and no smell of smoke. Just an oval mark on the ground, the size of a plate, burned dry. She didn't say anything. He put away his notebook, packed half of the things, and asked me to leave. I didn't argue. The road to the car seemed the same, but each corner took longer to appear. The daylight filtered differently, as if the forest didn't want to let us out so easily. When we finally got to the car, we both breathed a sigh of relief, but the feeling didn't go away. The engine started without problems. The sound of the start was the most human thing I heard in days. I drove slowly to the road. The sky was clear, but the trees were still obscuring the edges of the road. She did not speak. She looked out the window with her hand on her neck, as if making sure she was awake. Halfway through, as we passed a sharp bend, I saw her. A figure standing among the trees, tall, motionless, in a red robe that the sun was shining. He had no visible face, just a void under the hood. I didn't say anything to him. I pressed the steering wheel and continued. She turned her head seconds later and exhaled slowly, as if she had seen her too. None of them mentioned it. The city greeted us with an almost friendly noise. The traffic lights, the distracted people. All of that felt more alive than I remembered. That night we slept at home like someone returning from a long trip. There were no in-depth conversations, just routine. But the silence was no longer the same. He was more attentive, more alert. The next morning, while making coffee, I noticed something on the countertop, a remnant of yellow wax, barely the size of a coin. He did not remember bringing candles. I touched it with my fingertip. It was soft, warm, as if freshly molded. I threw it in the basket and didn't give it any importance. After a while, when I returned, there was another piece, the same one, a little larger, on the edge of the table. I didn't say anything to her. I just opened the windows to let light in. The air smelled faintly of dull smoke. The following days were a truce. We went back to work, to schedules, to traffic. But every night, when the lights went out, the apartment was different. The shadows seemed to have more pronounced edges. The corridor sounded hollow. The air smelled, from time to time, of melted wax. One morning I heard footsteps in the living room. They were not hers. They were slow, as if someone was making sure they didn't break the ground. I got up without making a sound, opened the door of the room and turned on the lamp. Nothing. Just the still air. But on the table, right in the center, were 3 lines of wax, thin, as if someone had left a mark with their fingers. She woke up when she heard me. He got up, saw the lines, and turned pale. He didn't say a word. He went to the bathroom, wet his face, came back and hugged me without explanation. I understood that it was not surprise what I felt, but recognition. "We have to go back," he whispered. "Only then will it stop." I didn't know what to answer. Common sense screamed no. But there was something in his voice that was not fear. It was certainty. And that, more than anything else, made me accept. We returned to the forest 2 days later. We don't plan the time. We just pack up and go. The road was silent, as if every kilometer weighed. She stared straight ahead, her hands on her knees, breathing through her mouth. I only thought about ending that feeling that followed us even under the city sun. We don't have the tent or the stove. Only flashlights, water and backpacks. We knew we weren't going to sleep there. It was a round trip, or at least that's what we repeated to ourselves to believe it. When we left the asphalt behind and entered the dirt path again, the air changed as if the forest recognized us. The temperature dropped and the light lost strength without the clouds justifying it. The same path of a few days ago seemed narrower, more crooked. The trees leaned inward, and the sound of the stream came from different directions. We walked without speaking. The only voice was that of the water, insistent, identical to that of that night. Every detail of the place was repeated exactly. The mounds of stone, the diagonal marks on the trunks, the strand of red cloth on the hawthorn. Everything remained the same, only now it was waiting for us. We arrived at the clearing where we had camped. The floor still bore the footprint of the tent, a square mark on the dry grass. On one side, on the rock where the 3 stones had appeared, there was now a full circle made of them. 12 stones in total. No one spoke. We just continue upstream, towards the entrance of the cave. We recognized it from afar. The arch between the ferns, the smooth texture of the mineral, the thick shadow within. I stopped. She took 2 more steps. Then he looked at me, and without a word I knew that he was not going to back down. I took out the flashlight and turned on the red light. The interior responded with a slow, deep breath, as if the cave inhaled for the first time in days. The tunnel was narrower than he remembered. The walls oozed moisture. The ground was covered with a thin layer of shiny mud. Every drop that fell from the ceiling sounded amplified, multiplied. We walked close to each other, taking care not to trip. With every meter, the darkness became denser, more material. There was the smell of wax, yes, but also of iron, of old smoke. After a bend, the corridor opened into a wide chamber. There was what we had only imagined. A perfect circle of red robes. 10, perhaps 12 figures, all motionless, with their hands clasped in front of their chests. In the center, a pentagram traced on the ground with a glowing substance that reflected red light as if it were wet. Around them, lit candles stuck in the mud. The air was hot, but the heat was not coming from the flames, but from the ground. She touched my arm. His fingers trembled, but not from fear, but from concentration. Between the robes, one moved. Very slowly, he turned his head towards us. He had no face. The wooden mask was carved with a neutral expression, human and animal at the same time. But before he could react, the chanting began. They were not single voices. It was a single sound that came from many throats. A repeated, grave, rhythmic word. Kana. The air vibrated. The ground seemed to respond, beating with the same beat. My whole body hardened, and I wanted to back away, but she held my forearm. In the center of the staff, something moved. At first I thought it was a shadow cast by the candles, but then I saw the horns. A silhouette slowly sat up, half woman, half something else. His skin was gray, his arms were covered with strips of leather, and his hair, long and black, dragged on the floor. Its head ended in two thin horns twisted like wet branches. She didn't speak, but everything about her seemed to speak a name that none of us knew. The singing stopped. The woman tilted her head to the side, as if listening to something. And then he sniffed us. The gesture was exact. He opened his mouth, inhaled, and the entire cave seemed to move with his breathing. The sails flickered. One of the robes took a step forward. I turned off the flashlight out of reflex. Too late. The holes where his eyes should be lit up red. It was not brightness. It was contained fire. I felt that he was looking at me without doing so. The smell of burning wax became unbearable, and a hot current hit my face. She whispered my name. The voice broke. There was no time to think. The song returned, faster, more urgent. The circle closed, and the candles were lit all at once with a blue flame. The ground vibrated. The walls seemed to breathe. Then I didn't look back. The echo of our footsteps mingled with the chant. The tunnel twisted as if changing shape. The flashlight came back on by itself in my hand, flashing intermittently. For a moment I thought I saw shadows following us, moving more fluidly than human bodies. The air became dense, unbreathable. The sound of the ritual was chasing us, but no longer from behind. It came from everywhere, even from inside the head. Kana, Kana, Kana. She stumbled. I lifted her arm without stopping. The mud covered us up to our ankles. The exit appeared like a luminous wound in the background. I caught up with her first, pushed her out, and then we both fell on the grass. The forest greeted us with a blast of cold air. The singing stopped. The silence that remained was more terrible than the noise. We don't look at each other. We were on our knees, panting, our hearts out of our chests. The mouth of the cave exhaled a dark smoke that dissipated in seconds. No one followed us. No figure crossed the threshold. Only the wind, moving the ferns, as if nothing had happened. "Let's go," I said, and she nodded. We walked aimlessly to the car, feeling like the forest was watching us in all directions. The journey that used to take 20 minutes took forever. The engine started at the first time, but the noise of the start sounded distant, faint, as if it came from somewhere else. I drove without speaking. She stared out the window, motionless. When the asphalt appeared under the wheels, we both exhaled at the same time, as if we had been holding our breath for hours. No one spoke during the return trip. Not even that night. Not even the next day. Only silence. But silence now had a voice. The city did not ask us for explanations. That same Monday I woke up, I shaved as always, I answered emails, I fulfilled calls that don't matter. She went back to work, talked about pending issues and deadlines. No one would know seeing us, that hours before we ran until we ran out of air inside a cave. The first nights at home did not bring nightmares. They brought details. The smell of dull wax appeared in places that did not belong to it. The hallway, the kitchen, the elevator of the building. Sometimes it lasted as long as a memory lasts. Sometimes, just enough to force you to look twice. On Tuesday, I found on the countertop a thread of dry wax, fine, like a fingernail stroke. I ran my finger over it. It was real rough. I threw it away and continued with my thing. When I came back for the glass of water, there were 2 threads, parallel, 3 centimeters from the edge. I didn't call her. I didn't say, look. I took out the trash and went down to the dumpster. On the way back, the air was fresher, and for a moment I felt safe from the symbols. That afternoon, the apartment had a different silence. It was not the silence of siesta or absence. It was a gap in the middle of the normal noise of the building. I rested my palm on the wall of the hallway and felt a faint vibration, as if someone on the other side was breathing slowly. I took my hand away. The wall left a mark of lighter dust in the shape of an oval, at the height of the forehead. It must be damp, I said aloud to no one. She was late. His eyes were tired, but his voice was firm. I told him about the smell, the countertop, the oval. He was not surprised. He poured tea and stared at the window without opening the curtains. Sometimes things stick, he said. Not everything follows you. Some things just travel with you for a while. I didn't ask what things. I didn't want to open that door with words. On Wednesday, the bathroom mirror woke up with a drawn breath, as if someone had breathed closely and left their cloud. I wiped a cloth. He came back after the shower. I didn't mention it. I just ventilated. On the glass of the shower, the steam left a clean figure where there should be mist, an elongated shape with a resting front, as if someone had waited patiently for the water to stop ringing. That night there was a power outage. Or perhaps they provoked it. The building died down like an uncomfortable conversation. I looked for the battery lamp, turned it on. The light was firm, white. She sat on the floor, leaned her back against the bed, and asked me to sit next to her. I did it. Outside, voices of neighbors. Did he leave you? Me too. They say he will be back in 20. The lamp painted honest shadows. Still, in the cracked corner of the hallway, the darkness seemed denser, with an edge that didn't correspond to the rest of the wall. He did not move. He did not approach. He did nothing. He was. I see her, I said. Me too, she answered, without turning her head. Don't stare at her. I didn't look at her. The light came back with the usual small buzz. The corner returned to its usual shadow. We had bread and cheese for dinner. We washed the dishes. We slept with the door of the room ajar, as if that counted. On Thursday, my nephew came to draw. He likes our table because it is at the right height to rest his arm. He took out leaves, crayons, made a crooked sofa, a lamp, a cup. Then he went to the cracked corner and, with brown and red, drew a tall figure without hands, with something on his head that could be branches or horns. And that one? I asked, feigning play. The one who takes care, he said. So you don't get in. I didn't insist. I poured him juice. He continued, calmly, as if everyone were drawing figures that do not look straight ahead. That night I dreamed of the copper of the pentagram vibrating in my teeth. I woke up with the feeling that someone was saying my name from the hallway, not in a human voice, but like when the wind sneaks through a crack and makes the metal talk. I went to the door. Nothing. Just the carpet with its cheap pattern and, on the edge, 3 grains of wax as an ellipsis. Over the days, we learned a way of being that I didn't know existed, living mindfully. It is not the shock of fear or resignation. It's the certainty that there's something else in the room without needing to label it. We opened the window every morning, without ritual. We would put a cup upside down on the counter, without explanation. We avoided candles, not out of superstition, but out of courtesy. On Saturday afternoon, we went down for a walk. The air of the city smelled of bread and dust. We walked around the block twice. Before entering the building, the glass of a parked car gave us back the reflection of the portal. The door, the mailboxes, the column with marks of old bumps. Behind, very still, to one side, the silhouette of someone tall with his head slightly tilted to one side, like someone listening to a wall clock. I turned immediately. No one on the sidewalk. The reflex, however, took half a second to correct. That half a second weighs like a confession. "You saw it," she said without question. I nodded. "He doesn't want us," he added. "He recognizes us. Sometimes he stops by to see if we continue where he left us." I didn't argue. The language of the obvious does not need agreements. The symbols began to repeat themselves more clearly. 3 lines of wax on smooth surfaces, ovals of clean dust at forehead level, new cracks in the corner following curves that moisture does not use. On a napkin, when he rested the hot cup, there was the outline of something like that cave sign, an open circle with a short incision through it. I tried to replicate it in pencil. It didn't come out. Things from there are not easily copied here. I made it a point to ignore it for a whole day. Sunday of active denial. Cleaning, tidying, cooking. An easy recipe, music at low volume, the window wide open. Everything worked until the knife slipped with a drop of honey and barely cut the tip of the index finger. He bled just enough. I went to the bathroom to wash it. In front of the mirror, the breath appeared again on the glass, with an elongated clearing in the center, the exact shape of a resting forehead. I held my breath, as if that would do any good. When I let go of the air, the clearing did not fog up. He was not on the side of the room. That night there were no smells or reflections. There was a dream, the cave chamber seen from above, as an impossible aerial view. The circle of red robes, the pentagram, the copper wire, the lit candles that seemed not to consume wax. And in the center, nothing. Not the figure, not the bodies, not us. A shaped hole. I woke up with the certainty that the center exists even when no one occupies it. On Monday, I tried rationality. I asked for an appointment with a therapist who spoke well to me. I did not tell him about the cave. I told him about the insomnia, the permanent attention, the smells. He said the right words: trauma, exposure, processing. He asked me what exactly I feared. I replied as best I could, "I fear that the world will continue, but not entirely." He wrote it down. I left without feeling deceived or accompanied, only seen from an angle that does not go underground. On the way back, the elevator took longer than usual. When it was opened, the mirror inside showed 2 people and a friendly blur in the background, like someone passing very close to the glass in dark clothes. We went up quietly. The hallway of the apartment smelled of toast from a neighbor. Our door had, at the height of the lock, a circular, faint mark of soot. I wiped it with my thumb. He returned the next day. We began to talk about the subject only in short sentences, like someone who manipulates glass. Not today. Open the window. Don't put candles. One afternoon, I found on the table her notebook open to a new page. They were not drawings. They were names written in columns, half crossed out, half repeated: Kana, Kanu, Kanu, Kane, Kanuha. When I saw her, I closed the notebook without saying anything. She walked into the room and looked at me like you look at a child who is about to touch a hot pot. "There is no name that I can reach," he said. "I just wanted to see if any would let me breathe. I didn't ask if I had found it." That night, one of the spotlights in the hallway flickered and went out. I changed it with ridiculous satisfaction, as if fixing that fixed other deeper things. As I stepped off the sidewalk, I saw that the new crack in the corner made a curved line that, if you followed it with your finger, formed a crescent. I smiled because the body also needs the inside joke. I glued my finger and followed her. It ended at the exact height of a forehead. It wasn't all tension. Sometimes, the whole day passed with the clean normality of before. We bought bread, paid bills, watered the balcony plant. I invited a friend over for dinner and we talked about football. No one saw anything strange. That normality did not deny anything. It floated on top, like oil on water. We learned not to mix. A week later, in the morning, before work, I turned on the kitchen faucet. The water ran with that force of old pipe. The smell was not waxy. It was metal. I looked at the wringer. 3 spoons were lined up from largest to smallest, forming a perfect semicircle with the edge of the sink. I moved them quietly and put them crooked again. When I returned with the coffee, they were tidy again. "He sees us," I said. "He measures us," she corrected, as if we were points on their map. I didn't know if that calmed me down or sank me a little deeper. The last detail, the one that broke my economy of words, came one morning. I was awakened by the glow of the room. I woke up thinking about a poorly connected charger. When I looked out, I saw a circle of small glows on the floor. They were not flames. They were drops of still liquid wax, arranged with a watchmaker's hand. In the center, a clean hole where there was nothing. The circle wasn't big, the perfect circumference of a plate. I stood, not moving a muscle, until the wax solidified and stopped shining. She appeared behind, barefoot, wearing the yellow sweater. He didn't scream. He did not run. He stood next to me and whispered, "Don't step on it." And we don't step on it. We walked around the shore, as we did in the woods with the mounds. I opened the window. Cold air came in. The circle remained there, luminous during the day because of the way the light hit it. We didn't clean it. We don't call it a signal. We do not name him. That morning, before we left, I rested my forehead on the wall of the hallway, at the height of the mark. It was cold. I felt, for the first time since the cave, something like peace. Not because I had finished anything, but because I understood that what happens to us is not resolved. It is only inhabited. "He's not chasing us," I said, already with my backpack on my shoulder. "No," she repeated. "It awaits us." And we go out every day like people who arrive late to work, in a hurry and without explaining anything. Time later became strange. Not because new things happened, but because the same things kept happening, as if the world were repeating the day in slow motion. The smells came and went. Cracks appeared elsewhere. Sometimes the mirror returned a normal reflection. Other times, it took me a second to reach my movements. But there was no longer any fear. Just quiet vigilance, a new way of being. We learned to live with it. To leave the light on when we left, not as a precaution, but to remind him that the space was occupied. To open the window every morning so that the air could circulate, as if air were a shared language. To avoid prolonged silences, because silence, we knew now, also listens. The city continued to rotate the same. The neighbors talked about heat, politics, traffic. No one noticed the faint smell of burnt wax in the hallway of the building, nor the marks that sometimes dawned on the doors. Just us, and maybe that was fair. Not everyone should carry the same presences. One day, going through old photos, I found one of us in the woods. He didn't remember taking it. The frame showed the clearing, the stream in the background, and us with our backs turned. The strange thing was the light. On the stone where the 3 stones had appeared, there was a shadow darker than the rest. A tall figure, with a sloping neck. I kept it without showing it. When I closed the gallery, the phone flickered. For a moment, the screen showed the reflection of my face, and behind it, on the glass, the same dark profile. I was not startled. I just said in a low voice, "I know you're here." That night I dreamed of the cave, but not of its interior. I dreamed of the entrance. The ferns moving with a wind that did not come from outside, but from within. The sound of the stream was identical to the usual, but each drop as it fell seemed to say something, a name that no longer needed to be understood. When I woke up, she was still asleep. I stroked her shoulder and felt her breathing easy. The dawn filtered through the curtains, warm, without strange shadows. For a moment, I thought that maybe it was all over. I went to the kitchen. The circle of wax on the ground was gone. Neither the marks, nor the smells. Just a clear, almost invisible spot where the center had been. I touched the ground. It was cold. I looked at the wall. The crack had grown a centimeter and followed the same curved line, ending at the height of the frente sonrino of irony, of recognition. I went out to the balcony. The noise of the traffic was a bomb. People who walk without looking, cars that fight for seconds, normality at its best. I thought about what we had done. Enter where no one called us, breathe an air that did not belong to us, interrupt a rite that did not include us. And yet, we survived. Not because we escaped, but because we learned to stay put. When she woke up, she came to me with a cup of coffee. He held it in both hands, offered it to me, and stared at the horizon. He didn't say, "Are you okay?" Or, "Do you think it's over?" Alone. You know. I think I'm not afraid anymore. What? All this why? Because I understood that we don't have to understand it. Just live next door. The day continued normally. She went to work, I washed the dishes, I arranged the books. As evening fell, the light coming through the window had an impossible reddish hue. It did not come from the sun, it came from the air. It lasted just seconds, long enough to illuminate the hallway and mark the shadow of someone standing on the floor, head bowed. I didn't move. I just took a deep breath and let it dissipate. That night I wrote this. Not to tell a story, but to remember it accurately, in case we ever forget when it all began. The steam from the coffee fogs up the screen, and in the window glass I see my reflection, and behind me, the calm outline of a figure doing nothing, just waiting. And I know that I don't have to name her, or throw her out, or fear her, because I understood at last. There are things that don't follow you. They are simply waiting for you.